Okay, so we've got this big World Cup qualifier coming up, France versus Iceland. And on the surface, yeah, it's a football match, but it's also a perfect chance to look at something much, much bigger. The massive and honestly kind of misunderstood world of data in professional soccer. We're going to see what separates the predictions everyone makes from the real analytics happening behind closed doors at the clubs.
So here's the game plan. First, we're going to talk about just how much data is swirling around in the sport today. It's a lot. Then we'll peek inside the analytics departments to see what's really going on. Of course, we'll use France versus Iceland as our live case study, and we'll wrap up by looking at what's holding data back from totally changing the game. All right, let's start with the big picture. Football is practically swimming in data now, but what are clubs actually doing with all of it? This quote right here just nails the huge paradox in the sport. It says analytics expertise is still embryonic. Think about that. Clubs have everything, GPS trackers, tactical cameras, you name it. But the skill to turn all that raw data into a game-winning strategy, it's just getting started. They're drowning in information, but are they actually using it right? And this chart just shows you exactly what's happening. A huge survey found that a massive 73% of all data analysis is being done by the performance department. You know, the coaches and the sports scientists. Those dedicated data teams you hear about, they're only handling about 18% of the work. So this tells you that for most clubs, data analytics isn't some specialized high-tech division. It's just one more task piled onto the performance staff's plate. So if it's the performance staff doing all this number crunching, what does that actually look like day to day? Well, when you see where they get their information from, it's kind of surprising. This is fascinating, seriously. When you ask these guys where they get their guidance, what's the number one source? Just talking to each other. Peer discussions. And what's at the absolute bottom of the list? Scientific literature. The most detailed, peer-reviewed, cutting-edge research in their own field is the last place they look for answers. It's wild. And that leads directly to this conclusion. There's this giant gap, right, between the smart folks in academia doing all this incredible sports science research and what actually happens on the training ground. What looks great in a lab just isn't making it onto the pitch where it counts. And this is the absolute core of our story today. Clubs are fantastic at what's called exploratory data analysis. That's looking backward. How many kilometers did our striker run last match? But the thing they're least likely to do, use data for forecasting and prediction. You know, looking forward to what might happen. Which is so ironic, right? Because when we as fans, media, bettors, when we talk about a football match, what are we doing? It's almost all prediction. So let's use our case study to really dig into that. All right, the stage is set. World Cup 2026 qualifier. France, the absolute powerhouse, versus Iceland, the ultimate underdog story. It's all happening at the Parc des Princes in Paris. This is the perfect real-world lab for us to look at this disconnect between what clubs do and what the public does. Okay, let's put on our predictor hats for a minute and look at all the data that everyone, from you at home to the betting experts, is using to call this match. You know, the exact kind of stuff clubs seem to be avoiding. First thing you look at is history, right? And the timeline here is pretty clear. France is undefeated in their last 5 games against Iceland, and that includes a 4-0 beatdown in Paris. I mean, that's a pretty powerful check in the France wins column already. And it's not just ancient history. Current form tells pretty much the same story. France is on a roll, winning 6 of their last 9. Meanwhile, Iceland really struggles on the road. They've lost 7 of their last 10 away qualifiers. That's another big blinking sign pointing towards a French victory. Now, you might look at the league table and see a little twist. After one game, yeah, Iceland is technically on top because of goal difference. But does that little detail really change anyone's overall prediction for this match? Nah, probably not. And of course, you can't talk about prediction without talking about the superstars. And this stat, this is just monumental. Kylian Mbappe, at just 26 years old, has already matched Thierry Henry's all-time goal record for France. When you have a player in that kind of historic form, that's one of the strongest predictive variables you can possibly have. And finally, you have the last-minute stuff, the real-time variables. France has some injuries, forcing them to make changes. Hugo Ekitike is expected to get his first start. Iceland, on the other hand, is completely settled. No injuries, and they'll probably put out the exact same team that just won 5-0. It adds a tiny bit of unpredictability for France and some nice stability for Iceland. So you throw all of that into the pot, the history, the form, the superstar stats, the team news, and what do you get? You get the public consensus right here, a pretty comfortable 3-1 win for France. It's a textbook example of the kind of forecasting that apparently clubs are using the least. And that brings us right back around to the big question. If prediction is so central to how we all watch and enjoy the game, why on earth is there such a massive gap between us and what's happening inside the clubs? Well, the research boils it down to 3 main roadblocks. 1, money. Especially for smaller clubs, they just can't afford the best tools and experts. 2, the way clubs are structured. Different departments don't talk to each other. And 3, probably the biggest one, is just a limited understanding of analytics among the staff themselves. There's not trained to think that way. But look, it's not all bad news. The experts have a pretty clear path forward. You've got to invest in training the staff so they actually understand the data. You have to build teams where coaches and data scientists actually work together. And most importantly, you have to build that bridge so all that amazing academic research can finally make its way onto the field. So, as we get ready to watch France and Iceland, it kind of leaves you with one final thought. We see a game of skill, passion, and tactics on the pitch. But maybe, just maybe, the most important battles in the future won't be fought on the grass at all, but inside a computer. And you have to wonder, will the teams that finally crack this data code be the ones we call champions tomorrow?